It is the Martha Zoller Show. We're so happy that you're here with us today. And joining us right now is Representative Barry Loudermilk, who is who heads up the Oversight panel investigating the now defunct House Select Committee on January 6th, and is also looking into interactions that Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis interact with the committee to look into January 6th. Representative Loudermilk, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Martha. It's good to be with you. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, so we talked about this a few months ago, but I know a lot more has happened since then. How deep and wide is this really, I hate to use the word conspiracy, but this movement to only tell one side of the story of January 6th?
Well, the Select Committee is, in my opinion, in damage control right now because for a long time, most people suspected there was a political motive into what they were doing. But now that we're releasing the evidence of that, people are starting to see that the Select Committee didn't do what it was asked to do, but it tried to legislatively prosecute Donald Trump. And I mean, they're literally trying to cover up their cover-up at this point, and they really don't have a leg to stand on. But even from the very onset, the legislation that was passed to create the Select Committee gave them specific directions of what they were supposed to do. The main task was to look at the security failure at the Capitol and make recommendations of changes that should be made so it'll never happen again. There was nothing in their final report about that, and we couldn't even find documents to indicate that they ever did any research in it. So what they did do is Liz Cheney effectively took control of the entire committee, even though she wasn't the chairman, and she directed them to point everything at Donald Trump to create a narrative that he was the one who planned the attack on January 6th. He was the catalyst behind it, and they even made up a lot of sensational stories from everything that he's throwing food in the West Wing of the White House till he attacks a Secret Service agent. And basically what we found out is all the evidence that did not support that narrative, most of it was kept out of the public eye, and even tried to keep it out of away from us to be able to expose it. But through the diligence of our team, and we're relentless. We're not going to stop until we get it all. We were able to obtain a lot of this evidence, and we're making it available to the public.
So, for example, there was that so-called bombshell testimony by Cassidy Hutchinson, who really was a lot of hearsay, when she was given the testimony. But there was direct testimony by someone who we never heard from. So was that a common theme, that you'd have a witness testify in a certain way, and that if there were witnesses that testified differently, you didn't hear from them?
That's exactly what happened. And it's interesting. I call Cassidy Hutchinson the REO Speedwagon witness. You remember the song, I heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from another?
Yes.
And that was her testimony, at least one of her testimonies. So one of the things we uncovered is Cassidy Hutchinson was called in for 3 testimonies in the beginning with her original attorney, which was representing a lot of the people from the Trump White House. He's from the Atlanta area. Everyone who knows this attorney, they refer to him as a Boy Scout. He is a by-the-book guy and a good attorney to represent you, and he's just going to do everything by the book. And so her first 3 testimonies pretty much aligned up with everyone else that was testifying. They weren't giving them any information that the Select Committee wanted. After her 3rd testimony, these are behind closed doors depositions, Ms. Hutchinson has a meeting with Liz Cheney without her attorney present, which is a violation of rules and law as well. When they finish that meeting, Cassidy Hutchinson fires her attorney, and Liz Cheney provides her with a new attorney. Then Liz Cheney calls her in for a private deposition. So the other depositions were with staff attorneys and her attorney and other members of the select committee. Liz Cheney scheduled this one without notifying any other member of the committee. They didn't hold it in the normal committee room. They had it in Liz Cheney's hideaway office in the Capitol, and it was only Liz Cheney, Cassidy Hutchinson, her attorney, a court reporter, and a videographer. And it was in this testimony where she started telling these sensational tales of President Trump screaming that he wanted magnetometers taken down, that he knew that the people there at the Ellipse had weapons and he wanted them there. They were his people, that he threw food. He attacked a Secret Service agent because they wouldn't drive him to the Capitol. That's when all of this all of a sudden comes out, which is in contrast to her first three testimonies. Liz Cheney then takes that videotape, calls a meeting of the entire committee, and plays the video of her testimony. They decide right then they have to have an emergency televised hearing. So within days, they have this hearing where they are parading Ms. Hutchinson before the entire country with these sensational stories, which they never corroborated with anyone else to that point. That right there tells you they got this story they wanted. They didn't want anybody else to contradict her story. But from that point on, we have been able to find different transcripts of different interviews that almost exclusively, she's the only one that comes up with these stories. We just released a transcript of a White House employee who was physically with Donald Trump that day. And this guy is apolitical, so he's not taking any sides. I mean, he talks about Trump being angry and using some foul language that day. But, I mean, he's a New York construction guy, right? So yeah. I don't think that surprises anybody. But he explicitly denies that some of her testimony. But the interesting thing is there was a testimony by Tony Ornato, who was Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. Basically, he oversaw all the Secret Service, all the presidential movements and all this. He was a former Secret Service agent himself. This has been known since they did their investigation as the missing Ornato testimony. We recovered it and found out in that testimony that Tony Ornato had testified before the committee that none of these things happened, and that Donald Trump did authorize the National Guard. He authorized 10,000 troops for the National Guard days before January 6th, which we knew to be fact. But again, this was a missing testimony. Then we found out that the Select Committee sent 4 transcribed interviews, their transcriptions, to the White House instead of keeping them. They are House documents. They belong to the House. They sent them to the White House, and they sent 8 to the Department of Homeland Security. The 8 at Homeland Security were the Secret Service agents that were with the president that day. The 4 White House documents were White House employees that were with either Donald Trump or Mike Pence that day. So we started a campaign, went to battle with both the White House and DHS to get these documents. And we've at least partially won both of those battles. We have had access to the White House transcribed interviews, both redacted and unredacted, and we're starting to make the redacted versions available. Most of the redactions are to protect the identities of, and they're mostly military personnel. But with Department of Homeland Security, they wouldn't even respond to us for a long time. We were finally able to get them to send some of the redacted transcribed interviews, and one of the ones they sent us was of the driver of the SUV that Donald Trump supposedly tried to take the steering wheel. Now, Martha, this is what's interesting. Cassidy Hutchinson made her public statements in June. They didn't even interview the Secret Service driver until September. When they interviewed him, they never did even ask him if that incident took place. He had to interject it on his own. This will tell you, they did not want to hear from him that it didn't happen because they had a predetermined narrative. So it's not just the missing documents, is that we start seeing this pattern of avoiding certain questions that they know would contradict Cassidy Hutchinson's hearsay testimony. So it's clear. I mean, and no one, even we've got mainstream media reluctantly saying, yeah, this doesn't look good. No, it doesn't look good, because this is a congressional committee engaged in promoting a false narrative for political purposes under the guise of doing an investigative committee work.
So, Representative Loudermilk, I mean, appreciate you keeping the work going on this. We've got to get to the bottom of this. Yes, you're right. Mainstream media is reluctantly taking a look at this now. If people want to know more about what you're doing, how can they find out?
There's several different ways you can do it. If you just Google or do a search on my name, you're going to find a lot of articles. If you go to my website at loudermilk.house.gov, you can find links there to our official page. But also, more directly, is if you go to the Committee on House Administration's website, you can just search that and click on our subcommittee. We have all the documents listed there, the transcribed interviews, and we send out regular breaking news of anything that we find out, such as the things we found out about Fonnie Willis we're starting to post out there as well.
Absolutely. Representative Barry Loudermilk, thank you so much for being a part of this fight, and we'll talk to you again soon.